My last name.
Yeah. So did you hear
Okay.
that?
Yep, I heard it.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Actually, how do you spell your last name?
It is Adamov, and that's V as in Victor.
Okay. And then from here, just identify however you start and take it away. It's all you, bud.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, man. So I'm Shane, and I am an addict. Um, First, before I ever get started, anytime I share anything about my story or where I came from and where I'm at today, I want to say I support all forms of recovery, whether it be AA, NA, CR, CA, any of that, man. Uh, this disease is killing people left and right, and you get in where you fit in and grab a hold of that. Um, so a little bit about me. I'm 30 years old. I'm from Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and I am a meth addict. And I say that, but I want everybody to understand that if the meth's not there, I'm going to drink alcohol. I'm going to smoke weed. I'm going to do anything alcoholically. Um, I also want to start off by saying that this isn't your typical story. Um, and I always love saying that because a lot of people have this conception that people who are addicts must have been born into an addict lifestyle. With me, I had a great childhood. Both my parents stayed married. Never smoked a cigarette. Never even said a cuss word. And I highlight the importance of that because of the fact that this disease does not discriminate. Um, Growing up, man, I had a great childhood. Like I said, parents in and out of church, God fearing, parents worked. I always had clothes, always had shoes. Was it the nicest of things? No. Like any parent out there with a bunch of kids, they struggle to make ends meet. But my parents always made ends meet. I always had food, always had a house over my head. Um, Growing up, I was very involved in sports, very involved with social life, doing all these things, man, things that you wouldn't expect your normal addict, as some would say, to be doing. Um, and I should have known from an early age that I had this disease because I saw signs from a very, very early age, if that makes sense. So when I played football and I played baseball growing up, I found my identity in that. And that is so crucial to this story, man, because as most of us addicts and alcoholics are, we are chameleons. I am very good at blending in with the crowd and blending in with who I need to blend in, all for the sole purpose of I was never happy with myself. I was never truly happy with who I was and what I did, and I could never make someone happier than what they wanted to be. Um, so I remember my first time ever dabbling in anything, you could say. Again, sports was a passion for me, man. Growing up in my household, I wasn't around alcohol, I wasn't around cigarettes, I wasn't around weed. Um, I had an incident in my life where sports kind of got out of my life due to I had an injury in football, knew that wasn't ever going to pan out. And at that point, my life kind of turned upside down on its head. I lost my identity in the sports, I lost my identity in the social life. And so I started turning to smoking marijuana, smoking weed. And man, I loved it. I loved it like almost probably everybody who ever did it had, man. And I remember this feeling I had over me of euphoria, and I realize now that I'm almost approaching 3 years of sobriety, the signs were there because I couldn't just smoke a blunt and be okay. I'm winding up selling my video games and my Xbox to continuously have my marijuana, have my weed, continuously have something inside of my body. Because for me, when I smoked weed, what it did for me is that the effects that were produced by that, I could walk a little taller, talk a little straighter, all my woe and my misery, all my woe is me and me being so upset about why did my life not turn out how I wanted to be, all that was gone. And in that 5, 10, 30 minutes euphoria, I felt happy. I felt happy. So my life, man, continued with smoking weed. And obviously what that entails is you get to a point where you burn a lot of bridges with everybody and nobody wants to give you money no more. I can't borrow money. I'm now out of stuff to sell at my house because I've done either sold all my stuff or my parents are now locking everything up because they can no longer get, I can no longer get what I need. Um, so I started dabbling into selling the drugs, and man, that was a feeling in itself. Was just because I tell people all the time, man, is that for me, I was addicted to the drugs, but the lifestyle that came with it, I was highly involved in. I got a little sense of power, got a little sense of respect, and that's something growing up that I thought I never really had. Looking back at my life, I realized that I was respected, but it wasn't how I wanted to be respected. And 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 man, I've searched for that level for so long of who am I? What do I want to do? Where's my identity at now? And so my identity became in drugs. That's all I knew. Um, so growing up, all I ever did was smoke marijuana. I drank some alcohol. I did a little bit of cocaine, like most of us. But for me, I did everything alcoholically. I had a friend of mine who could drink a beer with me on a school night, wake up and go to school. And then me, when I drink alcohol, I'm up at 4 a.m. still trying to find out where I can get another bottle. Still trying to figure out, oh, do I have to go do these things? Do I have to go do my responsibility? Do I have to do any of these things? I just continuously, my life, I'm not going to go into detail 5, 6, 7 years of the madness because we all know what that madness looks like. Um, but for me, man, I know that I dabbled in and out of those things for many years. I started using drugs and alcohol when I was about 15 years old. I got sober at 28. So you can tell for them 13 years what my life looked like. In and out of treatment centers, been to multiple treatment centers, been to multiple psych wards due to either a suicide attempt, due to me going to jail claiming insanity because my mind is not there no more. Um, in and out of jail, I've been booked into a county jail or prison 24 times. I've spent most of my adult life locked up at some sense. I remember when I first got sober, my mom told me, she said, she was so happy my first year of sobriety. She said, "This is the first year you didn't go to jail." And I was like, "What?" I didn't understand the power of that until she broke it down to me. She's like, "Shane, you were 28 years old and you've done about 6 years locked up in total from the age of 18 to that." And it really hit me then, man. Like a lot of my charges stemmed from drugs in some sense, form, or fashion, whether it be trafficking, whether it be possession, whether it be a big thing for me is that I stole to support my habit. I was very big on stealing to support my habit. Um, so I know for me, man, when my life was spiraling downhill, out of control, parents cut me off. Nobody wanted to talk to me. I'm now isolated and alone. Now you have a guy who is dependent on drugs, who has this internal condition that I'm trying to find some external solution for, which I've tried for so long and it never worked. I remember getting to a point in my madness where I would, for me, I would get high at first for the social part when I was younger, get high for the social part. Then I would get high. Okay, I'm going to start doing it every weekend now. Then it transitioned to, okay, I'm doing it every day. Then it's, okay, I'm getting high to deal with all my problems, whether I was happy, sad, mad, anxious, nervous, any of that. And then it got to a point for me where the drugs quit working. And now I'm high and miserable. And it's you get to that point that my program teaches me is that I was at the jumping off place. I didn't know what else to do. So, oh man, it's just looking back at it, it's a miracle that I'm able to sit here today and share my story with somebody. Um, so from 15 to 28, my life was pure chaos. Again, all the times being locked up, all the times in jail in multiple different states. I remember waking up and I'm asking the guard, what state am I in? What city am I in? I have no idea where I'm even at. Nobody wants to pick up a phone for me. My mom and dad, as much as they love me, they had to love me from a distance. I didn't know any other way. I remember sitting outside of my buddy's house, homeless, no car, no money, and I'm sleeping under his garage under a jacket. and I would hustle up just enough money to get what I needed to get that day, whether it be food, the drugs, the alcohol. And then all my friends would rummage through my pockets while I'm sleeping under this garage. And I kept going back to that. I kept going back to that. And it's insane to me that what I put myself through. And a lot of that for me was, again, that identity in something. I never had no self-love. I never knew what I was and what I was capable of. I always thought I was the hopeless. I did consider myself hopeless. I have tried everything else and nothing else is working for me. So if I got to seek out these, as the book calls it, these sordid places, that's what I did, because the last thing I needed to be was alone with myself. Um, I know a big changing point for me in my life that got me onto the track where I'm at today was, I have two major parts that I do want to go into a little detail about. Um, my mom came to town one day after hearing that I was really bad off methamphetamine. I started doing methamphetamine around 22, 23 ish. Um, Maybe even before that, but that's a vivid memory of when it started to take control of my life, was around that point. And my mom's getting calls and she comes to town, and I'll never forget it. She comes to the mother of my child's house, and I was in the shower at the time, I was doing something, and I walk out and she has this look on her face, just disbelief. And I remember her saying, like, I remember saying, "What's wrong, mom?" And she's like, "Look at you." And I'll never forget, in my head I said, "I look good." And she said, "Boy, you look sick." And it hit me. And I look back at old pictures on my phone where I'm 127 pounds, skin and bones, not knowing no other way. And so when that happened, my mom filed Casey's Law on me. She pretty much told the judge I was going to kill myself on drugs, and she wasn't lying. Um, it got to a point in my addiction where I was no longer using to get high. I was using to not wake up again. That's where I was at with it in my life. I got mad when I got Narcan, not because of my bones aching and I'm going through immediate withdrawal, but because I did not want to open my eyes. I would put enough drugs in me to put down a horse, I would say, and get so upset when somebody tried to stop that or get in the way of that. Um, so my parents did the Casey's Law thing on me. Of course, I skipped out on that, jumped around all I could, not trying to go to rehab, not trying to do that, because I've already been to all these treatment centers, seen these counselors, done all these things. I'm like, I'm hopeless. They can't help me. There's nothing that can be done for me. Nobody can save me anymore. I just don't want to do this. Um, but luckily for that event in my life, I ended up going back to jail again for the umpteenth time. And around this time, I ended up sitting a little bit over a year with all my, because I ended up having to go to 4 or 5 different states and 6 different county jails in Indiana. And it was all bad. So when I got out, I thought life was good. Then I realized they don't care how much time you did. You still got to go to rehab due to Casey's Law. So I ended up going to rehab. And at this point, I had my first son was born, and he was very young. I chose drugs over him every single time. There were times the mother of my child would text me and say, "Hey, he needs diaper, he needs food." And I would be on my way to the store with all intentions to go buy the food and the diaper. But I would get that text message of my guy saying, "Hey, it's in." And I would say, "Screw that kid. He can eat tomorrow." Or I'll now call my mom and manipulate her to try to send her money. "Hey, I'm out of money. Can you please go help?" Knowing that I have spent my last 20, 50 bucks, 100 bucks on drugs instead of feeding my son. That's the kind of addict I am. So I remember going to this treatment center after I did all my time, and I was at a point where I was like, okay, something's got to change. I now have a son. I got people on my corner. They're really trying to fight for me now. I've done overdosed a few times before this, and it's just like something has to give. And all I kept telling myself was, I need to get out of my hometown and get away from the drugs, and I will be okay. I just need to get away from these people, places, and things, and I will make it work. Um, Now that I'm had the time that I have now, I now know that these people, places, or things never got me high. I got myself high because I carry me everywhere I go. Drugs had never been my problem. I had all these issues of self isolation, no self love, had all these issues with anxiety. I had all these issues, all this internal stuff going on with me that I used drugs to fix those problems. And then it got to a point where the drugs didn't fix those problems at all. So now I'm high and miserable, and it's a terrible combination. So I remember going up to Lexington, moving with my mom and dad. I made it there probably 6 months. Again, the bedevilments, as some would call it, the spiritual malady crept right back up in my life because I did nothing to work on my internal condition. And I found myself using once again. Kind of asking myself, what happened here? How did this happen? Well, I know how it happened. I did no part or effort in into my recovery. I just moved away thinking that would help. Obviously, that didn't help me at all. I come back to Hoptown, and this was the last moment of my life where I realized something has to change. I need to listen to what someone else has to tell me because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm very bad at making decisions. My own decisions gets me face down in a ditch somewhere in front of a judge with a whole new sentence. I moved back to Hoptown in a full-blown relapse. I ended up running and gunning for a few months there, doing my thing, thinking I was on top of the world. As some would say, "Oh, I'm that guy. I'm doing big things out here. Mom, don't worry about me." And then next thing you know, I get caught in a high-speed chase in a stolen vehicle, and I got hit with trafficking, methamphetamine, and a bunch of other charges. I made bond that exact same day, and here's how I know my life was out of control. Because like most people, okay, you're fighting a trafficking case and some serious charges. I had no power of control. I got out and went right back to it and caught another trafficking charge 2 days later at a gas pump. Fell asleep at a gas pump. Have actual no control over anything in my life. Looking back now that I know how this program works and what these steps have taught me, is that I never had the power. I never had the power of choice. I never had my power of control. I could never keep myself from starting, and once I start, I cannot stop. I have instances in my life where I'm on parole or probation, and I have time over my head, and I got to go meet my PO once every week or once every month. And I would tell myself, okay, I just got to quit about 4 days before I go see her, and I'll be all right. Like that's crazy. Like that is actually ridiculous to think that I ever thought that was going to work. Obviously, that never worked for me. I always get sent right back in. So looking back, man, I look back and I see a kid who was scared, a kid who was broken, a kid who had no self-love, not just anything that dealt with self, scratch that. I'm not him. I'm not good. I'm not loving. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I always played that role. And for me, I realized that when I got into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, quitting drinking and drugging was just the beginning for me. It hardly scratched the surface. People ask me all the time, what's your program about? And I'm like, well, I could tell you to get off drugs and alcohol, but man, this program's taught me so much more than that. It taught me how to love myself. It taught me how can I say this? It taught me how to be happy with the person I am today. I have a little saying I say all the time to anybody ever around me, is that today I can now brush my teeth in front of a mirror. And I mean that. I don't have to brush my teeth outside of the shower today. Because for years, I would look in the mirror and hated the person I become. Never wanted to look at him. I had a 01 Blazer through my madness this last time, and I ripped my rearview mirror off because I hated looking at myself and seeing the person I had become. So today I can sit here and I can happily say that I am approaching 3 years of sobriety. For me, what had to change was I had to surrender everything. I had to get honest with myself. I had to tell myself, look, you're never going to be able to use drugs like the normal people. I have this disease that lies inside of me that once I start, I cannot stop. Once I was able to fully surrender myself and tell myself, hey, what you've been doing hasn't worked, I start to notice a change in my life. I remember going to the treatment center. The treatment center I went to last. I remember walking in. I'm seeing these guys walk around with cool clothes and cool shoes, and they're happy and they're smiling, and I'm just like, this is crazy. How are you guys just so happy all the time? Y'all have to be on something. And I remember talking to these guys, man, and one of them is my sponsor today. And I asked him, how did you do it? He said, do you want what I have? I said, absolutely, I do. I hear your story. How did you do it? He said, first thing I want to ask you is this: are you ready to let me run your life and tell you what you need to do? And of course, no, I'm not. He's like, has your own decision worked for you yet? You have a point there. I'm not going to argue that. That was a changing factor in my life, was when I realized I can no longer do what Shane wants to do today. When people ask me all the time, Shane, how are you sober this amount of time? How are you doing it? I could give the answers. Oh, yes, the program, yes, this. But if it all boils down to one thing that I could get across to anybody, is I quit doing what I wanted to do a long time ago. I like to get high. I like to run the streets. I like to do those things. But I know where that gets me today. It gets me at a point where I have a gun to my head in a hotel room, ready to blow my brains out. It gets me in front of a judge facing a whole new sentence once again. This same son that I abandoned in my madness, he now calls me dad every single day. He comes to my house. He was at my house this morning, stayed the night last night. My mom now picks up a phone for me when I call. I can have a key to her house. I can go into her house and she doesn't hide the purse no more. I met a beautiful wife, my beautiful wife. I bought a house since I've been sober. I bought cars and trucks, and hey, they're all insured and they're all legal today. The coolest thing for me is that when I get off work at night, I work 12-hour shifts. I get off work tonight and it's super late when I get home. My wife's asleep. My kids are asleep. I walk in and it's silence. And today I'm okay with that silence. And that is the coolest thing for me. Not to mention all the other countless awesome things. Like, I have money in my bank account now. I'm in college. I have gas in my truck. I have food in my house. I have people who depend on me today, and I can be that provider for them. When I get off work, I get to come home. Hey, and my wife wants me to come home. That's what's cool about it. They actually want me there this time. So I think that's awesome, man. If there's anybody out there ever struggling with anything, just know that we are not alone. We recover out loud. And this program, it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. All you had to do is do a few simple steps and do what is suggested to you, and you could have the same life I have today. Thank you for having me. Sir. And if you guys ever need to reach out, someone to listen to, someone to talk to, my Facebook is Shane Adamov. You spell that ADAMOV. And I have resources. I can help anybody get where they need to get to. I'm just another alcoholic willing to help another alcoholic.